It is, in my humble opinion, the best night of the month. The Lipedema Patient Roundtable, presented by Lympha Press. And we are saying a hearty hello to everybody who is logging on right now. Oh, it just feels like forever since we've all been together. The last time we did one of these live roundtables, I was in St. Louis at the FDRS conference, and just a few doors down, maybe down in the lobby, was Angelique Charles, and also Pale Ginger Pear was there in person. And then virtually, Pattie Cornute and Jenny Beaujean, they watched everything. We want to hear their perspective, that what they gleaned from the conference, not being there in person. And then, but wait, there's more. Afterward, everybody said, can you please get Kenneth Edwards on the roundtable? And Kenneth, we are so honored to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation, and I had such a great time at FDRS talking to everyone and doing the session, but then afterwards getting a chance to meet the crowd was so much fun. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, it is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I hope that I pronounced this all properly, but you are the executive director of the California Association for Licensed Professional Clinical Counselors.
Now say it 3 times fast.
Heck no,
There you go.
that
Okay.
will not. And I must say, for the audience, he's just a mere 9 months away from being Dr. Kenneth Edwards. So we will definitely have him back when that happens. You know, this roundtable is all about self-care, whether it's using your Lympha Press, whether it is using your vibration plate, whether it's taking care of your mental health. We are here for you. And I see chat is already lighting up. We see Tracy and Sherry and Jenny. Jenny is like our fabulous panelist chatter. So great to have Andrea Price and April Sluter, who gave a great talk at FDRS out there. And Susan O'Hara is also here, legs like mine. She is going to be, we need to know in chat, Susan, are you going to be in person in Australia, or are you going to be on virtually presenting at the Lipedema Australia event? Let us know. Inquiring minds want to know. But before we go any further, Kenneth, how did you connect with FDRS? How did those dots come together?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm executive director at the California Association for Licensed Professional Clinical Counselors. We also call it CalPIC for short. So it's the association that represents all of the licensed counselors in California. And on top of that, I am a practicing clinician. So I'm in private practice here in San Francisco. And Cheyenne is a great friend of mine. And we were talking one day and she said, Kenneth, oh my goodness, you would be great to come and talk to my group. And I said, you know what? I'm afraid. I don't know what to talk about. Uh, because, this may not look like it, but I get really shy and a little bit nervous when I'm talking to people. But then, I find a loving crowd and everything is fine. But what that did for me was it let me learn more about lipedema and the related disorders and how you talk about them and all of that. But even more so, what I mentioned to Cheyenne was there's a whole mental health component that's related to people's experiences. And that's what I wanted to talk about. And that's how it came to be.
So I'm interested in knowing what your takeaways were. What did you learn about lipedema and this patient population that has now informed the way you serve in the world?
hmm You know what? That's a really good question. What I learned first were how people look at people with long-term health disorders. And that was a huge insight for me. We can look at the psychology around, when people are diagnosed with a certain issue, a certain diagnosis. We can look at how, even in the research, sometimes the researchers try to tie mental illness, that word, mental illness, to a medical diagnosis. And what I learned during my research preparing for FDRS, but even past that, is it's more than just the co-occurring diagnoses, those types of things. I think it's how people walk out into the world and what they're experiencing. So what I learned the most is that this was an unmet need in this particular population. And you all know from FDRS and what I've learned through FDRS is there's a lot coming at you with medical information, very technical terms and things that are scary. Never does someone say, well, how are you feeling today? What are you going through on an ongoing basis? When was the last time there was the part of the talk that talked about the crazy things that people say, thinking that they're nice? Well, people never get a chance to process that. So this is really very specifically what I learned, and that we need to, I see someone saying we need to treat the whole person. Like we actually need to talk to people and not look at people as patients.
That is so beautifully said. And I see all the nodding faces
Mhm.
and also what's happening in chat. And I think that's why these roundtables started in the very beginning, because when we were studying lipedema, Lympha Press said, yes, we have a pneumatic compression pump that can help these patients manage the physical aspect of the condition. But
Mhm.
there's so many other components, and feeling supported and being in a place where people get you and understand you and aren't going to talk down to you or
Mhm.
say seemingly nice things that end up actually being kind of hurtful. I see you nodding, Angelique. Is there anything you want to add to what Kenneth just shared? And by the way, Linda Anne Kahn, we're so happy you're with us tonight. We adore you. And we want to hear some highlights from FDRS from you too. But Angelique, what would you like to say?
To his point, like it really is a big thing when you come across people that aren't looking at you like you're disgusting for a condition that is out of your control. And what comes across like more often than not for a lot of us in this community is we're battling with our healthcare providers just to be seen as a person. So FDRS actually, even though they put out like a lot of medical information and there's a lot of doctors there and a lot of surgeons there, one of the things that was really great this year that I keep saying over and over again is when I was watching Dr. Herbst speak. One of the surgeons that practices under one of the other surgeons that's kind of popular around here actually moved his chair so that I could have a clear view of Dr. Herbst and turned around and actually made sure that I had that clear view. So it's like it's a different environment once people understand that you're not just a fat slob that hasn't been trying or anything like that. You're actually a whole human being that is trying for your health.
Brenda, you're on mute. Mm.
I'm the one that always tells people they're on mute. So thank you. I actually felt hurt when you described how sometimes people think and judge
Mhm.
Angelique, and that went in. Angie Hampton in chat said it's so hard to see the way people look at me.
Mhm.
And I want to speak to that. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we do have a focus on this topic. And how do you all navigate that? Because we don't want to just talk about problems. We want to talk about how can we address these challenges that come up. So this comment by Angie Hampton is so real. It's so hard to see the way people look at me. How do you all handle that? Anybody else want to jump in? Jenny Beaujean.
I think for a lot of years, it bothered me a lot. Kids would look at me and I'd stare them back in the eye and, I'd make rude, snippy comments back or I'd ignore them, but it always bothered me. Somewhere along the line, and I think it's my now esteemed age of 65, somewhere maybe about 10 or 12 years ago, I just stopped giving a damn. I'm never
Mhm.
going to see them again. Who cares what they think?
Mhm.
That's their problem, not mine.
Mhm.
So I really came to a mindset where it doesn't matter what others think. I'm okay with me. I know what's going on.
Mm.
If they make the misassumptions, that's their problem.
I'm
Mm.
okay with me. That was a powerful statement, Jenny, that I think many people can relate to. PGP, you put yourself out there all the time and receive lots of appreciation for doing so, but also get lots of criticism. And that is the cost of being a public person. Can you speak to this for us?
So it's really weird because I will get people that will comment on like the most random thing and like tell me I don't have a right to do it. They seem to really like to get to me during what I call Shamrock Shake season in like February and beginning of March, because God forbid a fat chick like shows herself enjoying a milkshake. It's like a huge ordeal. But what I wanted to like kind of touch briefly on with that whole how people look at you thing, for anybody considering surgery or going through the surgery process for lipedema, it won't fix that. Just a little heads up, because like I thought like after surgery I'll be a certain way, the looks will stop, things will get better. To a degree they get better, which will piss you off, because you're going to be like, I'm the same person. Who I was hasn't changed. I'm still like the stubborn, sarcastic redhead. Why am I getting treated better because I'm somewhat smaller now? And it will mess with you like almost more than when you're like larger and get looks, because you kind of expect people to be awful. But to have the same people now like be so much nicer and treat you better, like really, really will mess with your head. And it's like, and then you also slightly feel guilty being upset about it, because you know there's people that wish they could have the surgery to be better. So how dare you complain? So it's this weird, like, I don't. So you find your other surgery buddy that gets it, and you complain together, and like just kind of keep it to yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, PGP. Pattie, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's really important to share that stuff, Kara, because a lot of us are either before thinking, after the same journey. And that's what I think is one of the biggest kind of strange things in our community is we don't always talk about the things that we're trying and doing. And even if it's stuff that doesn't work, I think it's really important to just be able to be vocal about it. I had a great conversation with Lisa Durer from Lipedema Simplified this week, and she told me about Aubrey Gordon, who just did the film Your Fat Friend. And I'm going to tell you, I was in tears watching this brilliant, funny woman just talking about exactly what we're talking about. She's not a person with lipedema, but just being somebody in a larger body and what she deals with. And it was like 6 years of her life as they were getting ready, and she went from being a very anonymous like blogger, like nobody knew who she was, to having to be very upfront and in front of people and being scared for her life because she was getting that kind of threat because of her size.
Yeah, I was part of Q&A for that movie. It's so good. And
really powerful.
Her big theme of it is just say fat. We don't need to sugarcoat it. We don't need to like, just fat's okay. Like, and just, it's a great, great movie to watch.
Thanks for the recommendation. I'm definitely going to look that up because, you know, many of you know, even though I don't have lipedema, I was a 5-year-old in a 100-pound body. And I remember what it was like when nobody wanted to play with me, as if what I had was catchy. And Susan O'Hara just put in chat that she got thin for about a minute after having lap band surgery and got so many promotions at work, one right after the other, just because she was thin. Interesting conversation to have. And I want to get back into some of the content from FDRS, but I got to ask Kenneth something that came up in chat. What about when it's your own family? How do you navigate some of that painful commentary?
First, the internal head shake. That's the first thing I think that we probably all have experienced when someone says something that is just foul. And I see the head nods in the room and I could feel them coming from the chat. It's like, wow, you said that. Cara, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to like Levi and I have talked about this many times. I talk about it in my upcoming book. Like my dad was very much my first bully. And like, I mean, just like he had gained weight himself and his internal fat phobia got projected on me. And
Right.
I woke up as like a 6-year-old to go walk the track at 3 a.m. before it got too hot in the summer. Any diet he went on, I was put on. I mean, like everything. Like 16, he was like, if you stay that fat, you won't find somebody to love you.
Mm-hmm.
And like 16-year-old me was like not nowhere near as big as I ever got. So every time I got bigger, that like soundbite would like replay in my head, and it messed with every single relationship going forward, whether I would want it to or not. Like whether I've come to terms with the fact that like it wasn't really me. He meant well. He was trying to like stop me from what he got. He did
That
it
meaning well.
wrong. Yeah, it was like the whole wrong approach, and it still just will replay in my head. Like
Thank you for sharing that, because it speaks exactly to the question. It speaks exactly to this tape that plays for many people over and over and over again. And it's the same thing that Jenny mentioned of just, the kid on the street or the person on the street. And I have two takeaways that, if you've got your pen, write these down. And I learned this very, very early on. One of them is having the internal thought of, you know what? I can't help what I represent to you. I can't help what I represent to you. So that becomes an internal narrative first, until the bravery comes to be able to say it to somebody to their face. It's one of those I don't give a damn kind of a thought that sometimes it's hard to get to that thought, if you're just coming into your identity and understanding what that means. But having to be able to repeat that to yourself is a really great way to think about that. The second thought behind that is, you know what? I can't rescue you from your feelings. Does that ring? Does that hit? If somebody feels a certain way, I can't rescue them. I can't help what I represent to them. It's a really empowering message, right? I wish that was my job. I'd make $1 million if I could change people's feelings on a dime like that. So I would give that advice to anyone who's hearing that from their family. Now, of course, that doesn't take into all of the contexts around family trauma and abuse and violence and just emotional trauma. That work out with your therapist, please. But these are two things that you could carry with you. That if a family member says something, if you get that look at the store, if even your doctor says something foul.
Angelique, jump in. And thank you, Kenneth, for that.
To the point of the family, I have a question about when it's addressed in a way of, I am trying my best to care for you because it looks like you don't care for yourself. And mind you, like I was thinking about that first thought of, I can't help what I'm sorry, I wrote this down wrong, but I
What I
can't help.
represent to you.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so like I get sometimes that like sometimes my family might look at me, especially on my mom's side that doesn't deal with lipedema. They might look at me and they might be afraid that they'll become immobile or something like that. I get that part. But what about when they're addressing it from the standpoint of, I just want what's best for you, and you don't seem to want what's best for you, even though we know what we do in our daily lives to try to address these things for ourselves.
Angelique, that's an excellent question. You know what, family? What's best for me is that if you would listen to me sometimes. I know that you love me. I know that you care, but the way you're caring is not caring for me right now.
I also say I live in this body. I dress it, I wash it, I know it more than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for your concern.
Mm-hmm.
And
Pattie, and then Linda Ann.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't know if it's an age thing like Jenny, but I am so over it. And I speak my piece in a manner that stands up for myself, just like I would if somebody was saying that to my sister at the dining room table, or my best friend. I would stand up for them. And you have to do that for yourself. And I don't care if it's family or your bestie or your spouse or whatever, your value, your worth is number one. And if they can't see that, they aren't giving you what you need. And it's okay for you to say that. You don't have to be anybody's punching bag, or even when they mean well, they can love you dearly. And the words that are coming out of their mouths are damaging.
Yep.
And that's what I say. What you're saying is damaging me.
Mm-hmm.
But I get really fired up. Like I'm like,
no,
sitting here.
and rightfully so, especially because these are the people that you crave. I'll speak for myself, unconditional love from.
Yes.
And the conditions are so hurtful, and you always feel like it's never enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you're jumping through hoops, and all the energy, the precious energy that you're expending
Mm-hmm.
to try and gain elusive acceptance
Mm-hmm.
from people that just don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my friends, put that energy into shoring up how you feel about yourself, because you are valid and worthy and beautiful. And the one person you are guaranteed to spend the rest of your life with is you. And we hope that you feel the love and acceptance tonight. This was a conversation that needed to happen, and we're so glad we're having it. Linda Ann, what did you want to add?
I just wanted to say that, and what Cara was saying, I've heard this from many of my patients, that their moms put them on diet. And I was just horrified. And this is something that I think is important to talk about and to work through, because it is that message, that internal message that Kenneth was talking about too. How could a mother do that? But they don't understand. But when they mean well, they really, really mean well.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad enough when other people are doing things, but when it's your own family. But when you're a child, right now, you ladies are so brave. I admire you all so much. And what you've been doing, you've been standing up for the lipedema community and showing everybody on your social media pages that it doesn't matter. I'm me. And look, I have my personality and I've got my following, and I'm fabulous. That's what you're showing everybody. But when you're a child and a teenager and these messages come, I mean, Kenneth, how does one deal with that?
Mm-hmm. You know what? That again, another excellent question. I mean, and I just had this conversation with someone yesterday. When we are children, we develop what are called core beliefs. These core beliefs tell us an internal message. The world is a dangerous place. I'm worthless. I'm helpless. I'm not loved. Those messages are the ones, I don't know why. I'm sure there's a book out here about it, but those are the things that get downloaded first. And then if it's our caretaker who is imparting this violence on us, that is the message that gets programmed. Now, let's combine that with all kinds of other trauma that happens along the way. Now, if we don't get a chance to process through that, if we are constantly invalidated in our experience, so that's with friends, with family, with doctors and medical folks, they don't understand that intention does not determine the impact. And that part is really, really important as we're talking to families, as we need to we need to talk about that more in mental health treatment and medical treatment. Intention does not determine impact. You putting your kid on a diet is giving a message to that child that they are not accepted as they are. A family member saying, "Oh, I just want what's best for you," that doesn't help. That does not help at all. You know, another thing that I wanted to address too with your question, Linda, and something that I heard Jenny and Pattie say is, and you all mentioned age. I didn't, so you can't beat me up. Just that you've come along through so many years, you had to get to that point. You had to go through a set of stages, and I refer to that as identity development. But for a lot of people who are coming along in those stages, how do we create a framework to identify where you are in the stages, number one, but number two, what are typical ways that people show up from a mental health perspective when they're in those stages? So in the beginning, it's realizing a diagnosis. It's understanding what that means. Stage two is a bit of denial, like, oh, no, I don't accept this. This isn't a thing. Then that next stage comes where it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to live in this space. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to go to conferences and read and connect with people. The next phase is the most important, is building community. Being around people with the same language. This is super helpful. Then you get to that great privileged space of saying, you know what? I don't care what those people think. Because now I have my people beneath me. I have strength behind me. I have wind beneath my wings. I have the information. I have that narrative that I've really punched out of the way. And I know myself. And I think that that's a really strong thing. So I really appreciate you all saying that.
And this is the community that has been built. Thank you, Brenda and Lympha Press. And thank you to FDRS, because I came away from there filled with happiness and joy and gratitude of doctors, researchers, therapists, patients, everybody together, all wanting the same to support and help each other. And everybody feels safe and loved. And I've been to every FDRS conference, but this one was just very, very special. And so that's the sense of community that is everything.
Feeling like you're not so different in a room filled with people. I was saying in chat, you know, when the other kids had Oreos for their snack, I was packed unsalted crackers because I was on a 1,000-calorie a day diet at age 5.
Wow.
I know that my mom took her identity from her fat daughter and was ashamed. So I get all that. And I feel like the FDRS, like, okay, our monthly roundtables, totally, it's a love fest. I love what happens here, and it's for reals. And then it translated in real life, in person at FDRS. How was the experience virtually, Jenny and Pattie? I'm interested in hearing your perspective.
Well, first of all, it was fantastic to meet Pattie in person when she's only 4 hours west of here. You know, it was really nice to be there and to share that virtual experience, because last year I watched it virtually alone. But to have somebody in the room with me to kind of comment back and forth with was really great, I think. But it's a very intense experience to be focused on that for that whole time.
And for people who may not be able to travel or have the finances to get there, did you have your robust takeaways, Pattie?
Oh, I did. I gotta say, for me, one of the biggest components was the damage to my body to travel. And going to St. Louis was not a place for me this year to be in physically. And to have a 2-hour drive, which was a lovely day with my husband in the car, a little short trip, and it was fantastic. I had zero recovery time. Jenny and I were chill. We could be chill together. We could, you know, did you hear that right? You know, we're going to have to rewatch that one, and to have dinner together and to talk about what we just saw and to collaborate. And the thing, I mean, you're definitely missing walking into a room full of people just like you, and you're missing that bubble of like the whole hotel is lipedema people, so it becomes your world. Like you're never submerged into an environment that is caring and understanding. Just you literally step into a perfect world for us. And part of that, I think, helped me look for that on social media. And that's when I started to really modify what I followed. And I followed people, they didn't necessarily have lipedema, but they were big bodies doing weightlifting, or big bodies doing, triathlons, and all these things that I was interested in seeing. Beautiful women in clothes that I want to get, and I can see them. And so now in my feed, when I'm on Instagram, it's either lipedema stuff or it's large body stuff, and all positive. And so that helps to feed me and to help me feel like I'm okay. So if you have an issue and I'm walking on the street and you have an issue with me, that's your issue. And I am not giving you any power over my day.
Well
And
said.
there's the change in the narrative. There is the change in that internal voice that used to say one thing, and now it's much more empowered. Thank you for sharing that.
And I wasn't always like that. That definitely was gradual, and being immersed in it and seeking it out. So I know there's lots of people that are new to lipedema and have just felt so alone. And I'm just here to tell you that this community loves you and will love on you and support you in whatever you need.
We have some new folks, and we're so glad to welcome new names to the participants list every month. Names I'm not familiar with. I am apologizing because it is the Fat Disorders Resource Society conference. Not everybody is aware of that. I apologize for not mentioning right from the get-go what we were talking about there. And yes, to my understanding, everything is going to be ultimately available online so that you can avail yourself of any of the sessions. From a clinical perspective, Linda Anne Kahn, what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I always love listening to Karen Herbst talking, but honestly, the real biggest takeaway for me were the patients on Sunday. And I remember last year crying when Cara was talking. This year was that Sunday, on the Sunday with the patients talking, it just got to my heart, and it was beautiful. And I loved the way they staged it. It was just, that to me was everything.
Yeah. For those that weren't privy to what you talked about, and I'm always marveling at how much information you can fit into this very limited time slot, Linda Anne. And I also know that you're going to be in Australia at the Lipedema Australia conference. What was the essence of your talk at FDRS, and what are you speaking about in Australia?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm so excited that I'm going, and I'm going to be meeting up with some of my colleagues there, and I'm just madly excited. What I'll be speaking about there, I'm speaking to the professionals on the Friday. They asked me to speak about the standard of care and why it's so important and how we've used it. So maybe I could get feedback from some of you guys, because I haven't done the talk yet. They need to do a standard of care there in Australia, so they want me to talk about that. Karen Herbst is talking just before me, and then I'll be talking about that. And then I'm speaking about the vagus nerve and how that affects the heart math and heart rate variability and lipedema. So that's what I'll be speaking about there. And then at FDRS, I was speaking about my new favorite subject, which is the fascia and pain. I spoke a lot about pain and lipedema, the emotional aspects of pain as well as the physical aspects of pain, and how the pain receptors are actually in the fascia, in the deep fascia, in the hyaluronan, which is in between the deep fascia and the muscle. And then the superficial fascia is also loaded with nerve receptors and pain. And so how it's important to be stretching. And then I gave some tools of what to do. But I ended with nature, because We have to do all the tools that everybody's doing with the massage gun and the foam rollers and all the things that everybody's doing. But you also have to work with the mind. And since this is Awareness Month, mental, you have to work with your mental health. So there are beautiful aromatherapy oils that can help, like Melissa, black spruce, that can actually calm the nervous system and the mind. So aromatherapy oils. But then I also spoke about nature, forest bathing, and shirinku, which they do in Japan, going into the forest. And if you don't have a forest, you can go to a botanical garden and hug a tree. The aromatic substances that are let off by the trees have been proven to help with immunity, with depression, uplifting the spirits. And so I just reminded everybody, don't forget to be in nature.
Beautiful. So this issues being in the tissues and your body keeping the score, this connection between the body and the soul and the mind. Kenneth, are you seeing this more and more in your practice? And it feels like it's something that makes so much sense, but all of a sudden it's like an aha moment collectively.
Mm-hmm. You know what's interesting? I saw there was a comment earlier about treating the whole body and not just a singular part of, what we look at. And yes, I have been seeing it. And I would say one of the good things that came from COVID is that people kind of stopped for a bit. They were at home for a bit. We had time to think. We had time to just be. And I know for a lot of people that was a really, really, really rough time. But for some, it was a reflective time. What I took from it and what I hear from people is, get out into nature as Linda talked about, to pay attention to, what you're feeling on a given day, making sure that you build community where you can, as we talked about, making sure that you are doing the stretches and doing the medically necessary things that you have to do. It's changing that internal narrative, like we talked about a little bit earlier. I mean, there's so many pieces I think that we need to pay attention to that I believe that we are more mindful of those things now. I do believe that we need to label them for ourselves. So, people always ask, well, what do I do for self-care? What should I do? Do what works. I know that's a really non-committal therapist answer, but do the things that make it work. And that if that means going to the botanical garden and hugging that tree, you hug it out and just have a good old time, right? If that means going for a walk, I'm here in San Francisco. If that means walking by the water and the beach, do that. If that means reading, if it means writing, if it means whatever it is, do it. I hope that answered the question. I got in my little passion spot on top of
I love that answer to that question. Whatever works. Linda Ann, you wanted to jump in. And then I want to talk meditation with you, Pattie. Go ahead, Linda Ann.
I just wanted to say that I work with each and every one of my patients with the whole person. And one of the things that they say to me, especially when they're new patients, is, I just feel so heard. I feel so seen. I feel so believed. But then we work at all the things that you can do to help with your mental health, with your physical health, because I always tell them, you're not just your legs, you are a whole person, a whole body. And it's so important to do that. And I feel that it's my job as a therapist, and I want you all to find therapists like that. We're not only doing the lymph massage and the bandaging and all of that, but we're really helping you as a person to balance everything in your life.
Beautifully said. And one of your emerging tools, Pattie Cornute, is meditation. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so you guys know I love Peloton and I use my rides as mental health. Like I literally listen to the instructor say, drop your baggage, you're here to ride. And I get to listen to my music and just pedal away. And I use it more for mental health than I do for physical, but it's both, which is fantastic. But I happen to see that they have meditation classes on my app. And so at night, I have been doing my vibration plate before I go to bed as a way to try to get me to relax. And I do it first thing in the morning to get me to be awake, but I've been doing it at night and I've really liked it because the house is quiet. And I've started playing a 10-minute meditation along with my 10-minute vibration. And at first I wasn't sure if the vibration was going to kind of counteract the
Right.
medications,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It works really well together.
That's so
So
cool.
that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
Wonderful. And our friend April Sluter loves meditation. She just put that in chat. April, kudos to you for your talk also at the conference. It was absolutely wonderful. We have a surgery question. I know that PGP, I often lean on you when it comes to questions of this nature. Debbie Bracey was just diagnosed with lipedema. And Debbie, we feel for you. We are here for you. She is scheduled to have a hip replacement surgery in June. She's new to the condition. She doesn't know how to deal with the swelling and pain after the surgery. Does anyone have suggestions for hip surgery after procedure? But not just hip surgery, because obviously PGP, you have not had hip surgery, but swelling and pain after surgery. And of course, I private messaged Debbie and said, if you don't have a Lympha Press, we would love to help you, because that's one of our specialties, is helping with pain and swelling. Go ahead, PGP.
I would recommend getting compression. Of course, check with your surgeon to make sure that they're okay with you wearing it. Advise that you have this condition that creates this additional swelling, and that surgery can kind of kick it into a little bit of an overdrive. So you want to stay ahead of that and not have that flare up and cause possible complications. And then, as much as they allow you to walk around and move, do it. Don't stay stagnant. That will just let the swelling kind of like hold in there. Drink a ton of water and just kind of like keep your system hydrated and flushing through it. And I recommend post-op, like, stay on your pain meds, whatever strength they give you, whatever prescription they give you, whatever they recommend, stay on it for at least the first few days to week. Set alarms. Even, you don't want the pain to like get to a point where you have to like play catch up, because then that makes getting up and moving something you don't want to do, which allows the swelling to build up. So I would rather have an alarm wake me up every 6 to 8 hours and take the Tylenol, the aspirin, or whatever they recommend. I'll get up, I'll get a fresh drink, I'll move a little bit, I'll take the pill, I'll walk a little, get that stiffness out, and then lay back down if it's the middle of the night. But that's what I recommend from like the surgeries I've done to combat swelling. Of course, run it by your surgeon, since it is a hip surgery versus lipedema, but explain in detail what it is in case they don't understand.
Thank you. And go ahead, Linda Ann.
So I have worked with many patients after knee surgery and hip replacement surgery, and the latest one is a patient with lipedema, and we did hip surgery. And the best thing to do is, as soon as you're cleared by your surgeon, is to find an MLD therapist, a manual lymph drainage therapist. It's extremely helpful in the recovery. And then to take Arnica montana, which is a homeopathic. Usually you can get 30C. But if you can get a 200C, which is actually stronger, that would be even better. That's very, very helpful. Of course, turmeric is really good because it's good for inflammation, but you have to be cleared from the doctor. You'd have to wait at least a week because it can increase bleeding. And then the knee surgery, I was at Power Lymphatics a few months ago in Las Vegas, and someone presented on knee replacement surgery, and the patients who had MLD, the lymph massage, and compression, their rate of infection was reduced dramatically to a group that did not do that. Knee surgery is amazing to do lymph massage of, absolutely amazing.
And we did a whole show on compression just a few months ago, and we know that you're new. So go to the Lympha Press website, lymphapress.com. We have our archive of every lipedema roundtable that we have done. It's also on our YouTube channel called the Lipedema channel. Just type in compression. PGP's compression therapist was on. Did you want to add to that?
I was gonna say they can send me a message as well if they need to find something custom or maybe something off the shelf that's like on a lower budget, easier to get on. I've got some different brands I can recommend.
That's excellent. Wonderful. We do have a few more clinical questions. We're not ignoring you, Kenneth, because we're so glad you're here.
Sure.
Feel free. And I know that you're cool just jumping in wherever is appropriate. We have a friend, Lisa Marie Shaw from the Edema Institute in Melbourne, Australia. Well, hello, Melbourne. We're so glad to have you here. As a clinician, do you have any strong thoughts, Linda Ann, on the conversation around exercise? I usually replace this word with movement with patients to support their mental health. Now, I'm also going to, of course, lean on Pattie Cornute for this, and Kenneth, bringing you into the conversation as well, the connection with movement and mental health.
Mhm.
Who wants to go first?
Definitely call it movement. If it helps them to not have such a, a specific point of view of exercising, and maybe that's not something that they're comfortable with or have never been an advocate or able to do that, movement seems like a much more not friendly but gentler way of expressing our bodies need to move. It's critical. We need to move, and moving in fun, joyful ways, they're out there. So,
and whatever exercise you like to do and you're comfortable with is what you need to do, because you can't do something that you hate doing. Now, on the other hand, sometimes we have to push ourselves a little bit. I love the water and swimming and aquatherapy. And Susan O'Hara has a beautiful book that she wrote on the aquatherapy for lipedema and lymphedema.
Wonderful. Movement, movement, movement. I love this. I'm going to change my language as well to reflect that. Kenneth, the mental health and movement connection.
You know what I was thinking about is kind of a chicken and an egg type thing, is you have to move in order to feel better, but in order to feel better, you have to move. Is that the same words? You know what I'm saying? Like it's you got to do one to get the other, but then you don't feel great, so you don't want to move. The way that I start to think about this, if we think about that sort of circular problem that we have, is how do you insert what we call in cognitive behavioral therapy a thought stopping technique? Okay, so come up with a thought stopping technique. What is that? It's a question that you might ask yourself. And for me, I'll tell you mine that I use for everything is, how am I feeling right now? And what I've learned as a clinician is that most people don't have a word that attaches to the feeling that they're having. Some people are like, ooh, I'm just feeling blah today. Well, what does that mean? Blah, bad, blah, nothing, blah, good. I don't really care. Now, during the FDRS, I showed everyone the illustration on the screen for the feelings wheel. So if you weren't there, just write this down, feelingswheel.com. It's not my resource. I promise they don't pay me. But on feelingswheel.com, if you're on your computers, please take a look. It really labels every feeling there is out there. So what I would want you to do is to think about, when you get up in the morning, how am I feeling right now? I feel blank. I feel sad. I feel depressed. I feel happy. I feel lethargic. I feel depressed. I mean, you could go through the range of things. In that moment, you know what? I know that I probably could be moving right now, but I'm feeling really sad. Let me validate that for myself. Let's not beat up myself because I'm feeling this way and I don't feel like moving.
The I shoulds often get in the way of
Yep.
us really taking care of ourselves.
Brenda, do you know what I call that?
What?
Shooting all over yourself. do
That's
not
good.
do not shoot all over yourself.
you need a t-shirt.
Right? It really speaks back to, you know what? I want to be able to do this thing, but I feel a certain way. I would like to do this, but this. It really changes the narrative. It changes that sort of that internal dialogue with yourself that, oh, I should be doing this. Oh, well, I won't do it. So now I feel I'm going to beat myself up over it.
Sometimes the pain and the wounds from our youth created a trauma that causes us, and I'm no clinical therapist, but boy, I've been to a lot of them. And it causes us, I know for many years, I disassociated from my feelings.
Right.
So I wasn't even able to identify them. And it actually feels wonderful to say, oh, I feel lousy today. I think I'm just going to let myself be lousy right now. And it's like,
Yep.
that's a healthy response to
Yep.
life.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And I hear this in therapy all the time with people, is that it's just as you described it, Brenda, that you dissociated from your feelings. What I found is that it's a form of trauma response. When we grow up in tough childhoods or tough families, or even find families that I think, as Angelique talked about earlier, people who they have good intentions, right? They love you and they want you to be taken care of, but they're going to say some things that just don't work. That's a response that helps us to protect ourselves when we dissociate from our feelings. But guess what? We carry all of that up through adulthood. And sometimes we pass it along as generational trauma to our children. And we get to stop it now. What we get to talk about is, I feel this today, and that's okay.
And that's okay. Angelique, I see you nodding and everything. Can you just unmute and talk to us for a minute? Because every time your head is doing that, it's like, I need to call on Angelique.
I'm sorry. I'm really feeling that because, I have talked about before some of the trauma that has happened with my family, especially surrounding when my mom passed away. I had a whole cousin that wasn't even speaking to me because she felt like I needed to go on the 600-pound life or whatever that show is, um, and so I've been there, and then I'm actually hearing Kenneth say, like, sometimes I mean, I'm there. I'm that person who completely disassociates from my feelings. Part of that also is I grew up in somebody said it in the chat earlier today, a very Christian household, a Black household. And so there weren't a lot of times where we could actually speak truth to our feelings. My mom actually taught me, like, it was okay to cry for a little while, but really, as soon as I hit that door and somebody else saw me, I needed to fix my face. I needed to put the smile on, and I needed to carry on like life was okay. In the midst of that, though, like, I was a teenager whose aunt committed suicide and literally had to continue going through life going, everything is all right, guys. I'm all right. So you're all right. And we're going to all be all right. And let's just be positive. So I think that it gives a little bit of a freeing aspect to it, to go, okay, it's okay for me to say today, I feel like crap. These things are happening in my environment and they're making me feel like poo. And, I'm going to deal with this emotion right now and then figure out what my next steps are, as opposed to, I feel like poo, but no, I don't, as long as anybody else doesn't know that I feel like poo, So it's really freeing, and it gives me a lot to think about as far as trying to become whole in my own trauma,
So the jury is in, and they all want you to come back, Kenneth. So I'm going to keep you on the invite list, and whenever you can join us on the third Wednesday of every month, our people would love to have you, because you've brought such value and insights to us in this hour tonight, even though we've also talked about the clinical matters as well. And I also just put in chat, Linda Ann had mentioned that she is presenting on the standard of care, and they need one in Australia. If you can provide your thoughts about the standard of care and what it has meant to you as you manage your condition and walk into doctors' offices, I will provide that chat to Linda Ann as data that she can use for her presentation. Because Linda Ann shows up every month giving and giving and giving to us. We want to be able to give back to her and help support her as she's doing this. 2 other quick technical questions, and then I want to close with a mental health tip, exhortation, or comment from each of you, and we'll end with you, Kenneth. What's fascia? Christine Roberts says she has large fibrous tissue at her ankles other than compression. What else can she do? and she doesn't know what fascia is. We apologize for not explaining that as well. Linda Ann, can you give us a quick Reader's Digest version of it?
Patty, can we be quick on that? No, I'll try. So fascia is the framework that holds your body together. Without the fascia, everything would just collapse. So it's in the, and I'm going to use some words, I'm sorry, but in the interstitial tissue or the extracellular matrix, there is fascia. Fascia lines all the blood vessels, all the nerve endings, all the lymphatics, all the organs, and it surrounds the muscles and gives shape to the muscles. And it's very, very important for feelings of sensation and for movement and for gliding. We talk about tensegrity with fascia. I'm sorry, I'm getting too detailed now, but that is, the building has the framework, and without the framework, it would collapse. And that's the tensegrity model that they talk about with fascia.
Thank you for bringing that up. And you also mentioned fibrosis. We want you to know that Karen Ashforth, who is a brilliant expert on the topic, will be joining us at a future roundtable, probably later this summer. Someone else also mentioned how to beat the heat in those hot summer months when you have lipedema. A great topic for an upcoming roundtable. We will definitely get to that. Let's do our roundup from the roundtable. Mental health tips. PGP, you've got this silly little smile on your face. And, you know, it says things. We don't know what you're thinking or what's going on there, but why don't we start with you?
She got her man next to her. That's why she's got that smirk.
Oh, Levi. Okay. Yeah. Well, we understand completely. Hey, Levi, it's nice to see you.
So
go ahead.
When you mentioned about beating lipedema in the summer, he said Arctic chill, because I keep my house at like 64, 65 year round, and the poor man freezes to death. But he knew what it was before he moved in, so that's where I stand. But what was your actual question? Sorry.
Mental health tip to leave our wonderful attendees with, and all of us.
If it's something that mentally makes you feel better, do it and don't feel guilty. Like, aside from murder or something like that, of course, you know. Ice cream, have it. Take a nap, have it. Binge watch a show and forget about the laundry. Do it. If it makes you feel better in that moment so you can reset and then properly like function the next day, do it. Who cares what somebody says? They're not paying your bills. Don't worry about it.
Well said. Love it. Jenny Beaujean, you're up next.
First of all, I want to say, Brenda, your talk at the conference was awesome. And we started the conference talking about resilience, and we ended it talking about resilience. And that was just dynamite to me, by the way. And I think one thing kind of tying into takeaway from the conference, when Wickham Avery was talking, they were talking about getting overwhelmed with all the things that we do and all the things we want to try and all the takeaways we have, and it's overwhelming. And she said, just try one thing. Don't need to do it all. And I was talking to Brenda earlier that last week I had a really intense week, and mentally, to prepare for it, one of the things I did was I figured out what I could say no to, so that my self-care took a front seat to it all last week. So
what can I say no to? Ooh, it's a powerful word, and it's a complete sentence too, everyone, just so you know. Pattie Cornute, what would you like to leave our audience with tonight?
I would like to say, if you're struggling moving and it's painful and it's daunting and you feel like you can't do the thing that you want to do, but you really want to try to be active and move more, play your favorite song. See if you can't move to your favorite song. Start there.
I love that. Great advice. Linda Anne Kahn.
Well, since it's Mental Health Month, and our mental health is really important, even more so as lipedema patients, if you take 1 drop of lavender, 1 drop of geranium, and 1 drop of mandarin and make a blend, actually you can do more drops, let's say 3 of each, do equal drops, and put that in 1/2 ounce of fractionated coconut oil, and rub that here on your solar plexus, on your wrist, and inhale. That will give you a sense of calm and peace.
I wish we had smell-o-vision tonight because that sounds amazing, right, Angelique?
Being that we just had Mother's Day and a lot of us have experienced the loss of our own mothers, and we've experienced loss just, in general, whether it is my own godson or sisters or cousins or wherever that loss may be. I want to explain, you are seen. It's something that I was told this week and I needed to hear that I was still seen. And even being seen is never going to take the place of your own mother. But there is a certain sense of peace in having the gratitude for seeing the community that is around you and that is seeing you and is there with you and walking through life with you. Like, we're all going to experience loss at some point or another. It's important for us to remain grateful for what we do have. And here in this community, especially, I'm grateful for you all.
We are grateful for you, Angelique. And our wonderful guest, Kenneth Edwards. Would you close us out with a mental health tip?
Oh, I hope it's deep and profound as all of the ones that I've heard already. I have to really come up here. No, I'm teasing. The first thing that I want to leave you with is, in kind of what we talked about at the conference, is there is empowerment in having a sense of agency around us. And what we worked on as an activity in the session was understanding what we can control and what we can't about the world around us. And sometimes, if we were to take a notebook and use this as an assignment, as a takeaway for today, is to create a chart. I said this in the session. And on one side of the column, what can I control about my life, my world, my context, and what can't I control? For a lot of people, to look at that list of what you can control is extremely motivating, because we don't realize how much is within our control. And our anxiety and depression and all of the stuff happens when, through trauma, through our context, through many other factors, it's very difficult, and we try to control those things. So write down the words that I said earlier. I can't help what you represent to me. I can't rescue you from your feelings. Stop shitting all over yourself. You go to feelingswheel.com. That's another really good resource. Another thing that I want you to look up really quickly, if you know Brene Brown, she's a really great speaker and all of that. I love listening to her. She does a really great explanation of empathy just go to YouTube, type in Brene Brown. That's like Renee, but with a B. Brene Brown, empathy. It's a 3-minute animated cartoon on how to show empathy to people. This is what you use. Show your family members, show your friends, show the people around you. If you're going to empathize with me, this is how I want you to do it. Okay, that's the one concept. The next thing is, I want you to go to Feelings Wheel every morning, or print it out, laminate it, get a notebook, write down how you're feeling every day. How am I feeling? What's causing me to feel this way? Why is this like this? And just validate that for yourself if you don't have a therapist or someone in your context that can help with that. But thank you so much. This has been so great. I could talk for the next hour literally about these things, but I really appreciate this. This was great.
We appreciate you. And I think collectively we could all say we all feel better. Don't you all feel better after the roundtable? I know I do. Thank you for being with us. We're sending and beaming love out to everybody who took the time to log on, or those who are going to watch the recording. Lympha Press cares about you. That's why we do these every month. Thank you so much. And you have a great night, everyone. We'll see you next month. Bye.
Thank you.